We hear a lot of perspectives on the Mankind podcast. Inclusion of a guest is not an endorsement of their views, and the opinions expressed here do not always represent the mission or values of the Mankind Project USA.
Looks like the rain has gone.
G'day guys, Brandon Clift here, your host today for the Mankind podcast. It is great to be back. Boyson gave me a nice little break as we welcomed our baby girl, Bindi Rose Clift, into the world. It has been an amazing 5 weeks. Not a lot of sleep, but a whole lot of love. And forgive the voice, coming off a bit of sickness, as 'tis the season to get down with the sickness. You're going to love today's episode as I interview Rj Singh, a friend from a couple of years back. We met virtually through a mutual friend, and Rj's been a fantastic mentor for me, in fact, through the past couple of years, primarily in a professional way. As I've gone through different kind of career choices and jobs, he's been phenomenal in helping me prepare for interviews, and just one of those guys that I believe is here to help a lot of people. So much, in fact, that he created a podcast completely selflessly, in no way to try and make money, in no way to try and promote himself or his brand, but more than anything, to be an arbiter of information, to deliver phenomenal advice from some of the world's highest performers to you. And that is the Ultra Habits podcast. He's interviewed folks like the founder of Spartan, Joe DeSena, the founder of Seal Fit and Unbeatable Mind, Mark Devine, and Joe Foster, the founder of Reebok. So you got some big swingers in the world of high performance right there. He does a phenomenal interview, and we have a great conversation. Before we started recording, he shared with me that he was feeling very different than the last time we were together. In fact, he was really kind of entering into a season of slowing down, taking it easy, letting go of some of the rigidity that comes oftentimes with high performance and high performance habits. So I came into this interview thinking that it was going to be about helping you guys enter into 2023 with actions and, easy steps to be able to tackle great challenges and New Year's resolutions. And instead, I was met with a profound conversation around the importance of habits, but also the importance of mindfulness and identifying where you are in the process. We speak about parenthood. We speak about what that brings and how that gets in the way of sustaining habits and routine. And we also spend a lot of time just kind of talking about what is necessary to be able to take on a challenge, to make it stick, or to create new habits to make it stick. The 3 things that are important, which I will tease for you and not tell you. You have to listen for that. So I think you're going to love this interview. I am grateful to be back. I'm excited to be back and able to put something in finally before we hit episode 100. It's been an amazing century of episodes. We're very excited to bring you a new edition of the show as we enter into our 2nd century. And it's just been an absolute pleasure. I hope all of you have had a great holiday season so far. I hope you're all staying safe and staying healthy, and that Christmas ends up being wonderful. Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, whichever you celebrate, I hope it's a wonderful season for you as we round out 2022. Enough from me. Enjoy this interview with Rj Singh. G'day and welcome to another episode of the Mankind Podcast, the show where we break the molds of modern manhood Goodness gracious, what do we do? To break the molds of modern manhood, to prove there's more than one way to be a man. This is what happens when you have a 5-week-old newborn and you're accumulating 3 hours of sleep every night. Oh, good to be here.
Yes.
Rj Singh is, mate, great to have you here. For those listening, Rj is a corporate and ultra endurance athlete, family man, and the host of the Ultra Habits podcast, who is dedicated to the pursuit of self-mastery. His mission is to lead by example and share the ultra habits needed to achieve ultra performance in all areas of life. Mate, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, man. And we had a show before the show where we were talking about the the challenges of where you're at and how it'll continue to evolve into different, more interesting challenges, but nevertheless interesting.
Certainly interesting. You were sharing, your children are, they're very young themselves, and so you were sharing the kind of dynamics that you have to deal with, where you've got daughter screaming at the son, you've got the wife saying, "Hey, can you take the kids?" In Australia, it's very early; it's still early in the morning, and I'm thinking, man, this is in my future.
Yeah, particularly with the new ways of operating, right? When you're close to home and there's proximity. My wife will say, she can't help but expect a chop out and help, and sometimes she catches herself out getting resentful when she realizes I can't help, but sometimes she doesn't. And I do recognize that actually sometimes not working from home is better for me and her, but right now it's better for me to be close. And so it is interesting. It does get even more interesting as the kids evolve and get more dependent, I suppose. But the challenge just continues to look different, right?
Exactly right. And it's very fitting that we're having this conversation. So, we're going to be talking about habits. We're going to be talking about, as we close out 2022 and enter into a new year, what can we do as men to perhaps establish some new habits, some new behaviors, some new belief systems around what we do Monday to Sunday, from eyes open to eyes closed, to just increase our performance, whether that's personally, professionally, across the board. What I think will be different about this interview than what most people would expect, kind of going to a podcast to hear about habits, is that, we get to be candid and talk about the nuances of parenthood, and when the master plan doesn't go to plan, or the ideal day seldom ever happens. Learning how to kind of get back on the track and not try and, I guess, finish the race or achieve the goal, but like, what are those small victories that we can achieve each day just to experience that forward momentum, whatever that may be. So I'm excited to have you a part of that conversation. This is the second time, in fact, we've been in conversation together in this format. For those listening, RJ was on our previous show, Masks Off Monday, and we were talking about habits, and RJ you just launched your podcast, and since then you've been able to have Joe DeSena from Spartan, Mark Devine from Seal Feet and the Unbeatable Mind, Joe Foster, the founder of Reebok. Mate, you've been interviewing some pretty big players in the performance world. So give me a snapshot from then to now. We're looking at 2 years here. What impact has the podcast had on you and your own performance?
Brandon, it's I think you were the first interview I did as a guest when Ultra Habits was launched, and that was a great interview, and continue to be connected to what you guys are doing at Mankind. I've got some friends here in Australia that are involved with Mankind, and we've got some mutual friends, and it's been my own journey has been interesting in terms of how the conversations have not only impacted the community, but really myself. And that was ultimately why I started Ultra Habits. Ultra Habits for me, I have no interest in being in like a coach or a life coach or a leadership coach. For me, I love to facilitate information, and selfishly that's for myself, but also for the community that I wanted to build. And this was really that executive athlete. The focus was the person that's out there really trying to conquer the world, so to speak. How do you do that with grace without knocking into everything and kind of being a bull in a china shop? And that was the original intention. And I've evolved through the last 2 years massively. For me, it was an opportunity to learn, to help disseminate information that I knew people would be after, men, women, the likes. And it's been incredible, having these conversations with people that you've looked up to, that you've read their books, and you're having a deep and meaningful conversation that's being recorded, and you get it, right? Like it's an incredible experience, and sometimes you're awestruck and starstruck, and you move through that, and you develop friendships and connections, and it's been a really great way to get accessibility to people that I would never have been able to do so without a show. Yeah. And I mean, from a personal perspective, there's been a lot of learning, a lot of relationships have developed on the back of that, and a lot of content and a lot of great dialogue has happened for the community.
There's something to be said for, I just went on a run and was listening to one of your interviews, and I love that at the end there isn't that prototypical call to action of, if you want to get my coaching, come to blah blah blah. Nothing wrong with that, but what I believe that allows is that you are passing on information without your own bias, without trying to make yourself sound so fancy that you want to direct everyone towards you being their dude and coaching them. And no, you're just a custodian to information to pass it forward. I think I resonate with that, because I'm not a man coach, right? I'm trying to coach men and through their challenges, and I'll bring those people on the show so they can tell their stuff and they can sell their stuff. But I just really resonate with how you deliver that information. And this will be the first plug. Go check out the Ultra Habits podcast. I personally appreciate the one with Mark Devine, one of your latest ones. Get after it. Have a listen. Mate, let's talk habits. So what was the calling, or what drew you to have such an interest in looking at habits?
Yeah, I mean, I was an addict, and like a hardcore addict, alcoholic for a long time. And, I think I've shared this before on either your show or other shows. I was serving the master of habits. I wasn't serving the right ones. And that's the case for all of us. We're all serving habituated processes. We just don't realize that. And most of us aren't intentional about serving the right ones. And it was working with a coach, which I don't do usually, and I do more of now. But at the time, I was working with a coach who helped me formulate the Ultra Habits brand, where she really realized how kind of process driven I am. And, she helped me unpack some of my deepest values. And that deepest value, one of the deepest values I have is commitment. And I'm an all-in type of person. And, when we started talking about this thing around habits, and you and I had this conversation before, I was like, well, it's not abstract enough. I'm quite academic. I like to have really, foo-foo, wide conversations. And, she was like, well, you should have a show about habits. And I was like, well, that's not sexy, like that's kind of like just really basic stuff. And the more I started to think about it, and the more I started to talk to people, the more that I started to have, and you could see the evolution through the podcast, the more I realized that, particularly on the podcast, the subject matter experts that come on the show that have really abstract levels of expertise on different kinds of subjects, the audience really need to understand, well, how do you distill that into actionable steps? And that's not easy to try to sometimes get out of the guests, right? But it is important for the audience and myself to understand, okay, well, you're an expert in XYZ. You've been, researching, or a practitioner of this particular system or habit or behavior for 20 years. How do I then distill that down in 45 minutes into something that, we can action and that can be life-changing? And that, I'd say the podcast actually then spurred my passion even more. And then I really came to realize how habit-orientated I am in my life. Even with the kids, even with the chaos, I've been able to maintain a pretty solid structure, I would say. So yeah, that's kind of been how the journey started and where I guess it's gone.
Thank you for sharing that. Even when I presented the question, I was like, how did you get into habits? I just think of habit. It doesn't necessarily hold weight or power in a sense, yet it's like seemingly insignificant, yet it's those tiny, seemingly insignificant things that we do day to day that create the whole, right? Those habits end up amounting to the whole. And so you were serving a different master of habits. I'm sure there were many triggers that allowed there was essentially the doorway to the next act and the next act and the next act. And before you know, 32 things have happened in a day that have led to the same outcome. I'm not trying to assume your situation. I'm just presenting this from having spent a lot of time with addicts. So I want to ask, like, what were the beginning steps for you to create new habits to get out of your addiction? And if you don't mind me asking, how many years sober are you?
Yeah. Very good point. So habit orientation is, it means that you are developing a relationship with the present, right? So if you are aware of the way that you moment to moment interact with life and the way you conduct yourself and the habits that support that, you are more likely to be a present individual. And that's why it's not necessarily sexy, because habits aren't necessarily future orientated. They demand for us to be in the here and now, and it's simple and it's basic.
Not witnessed and celebrated either.
No, it's not witnessed and celebrated, and therefore, and that's why I love it, because in that sense it's hard. So to your next question, I've been sober 12 years, and there was two kind of culminating events that moved me out of the previous habituation, right? So one, I hit a rock bottom with my addiction, which I just knew at that very moment I could no longer consume alcohol or anything. And that was a moment that I don't know how that was created. I mean, that's one of the biggest mysteries in recovery.
There was no real inciting incident. It just something.
No, I've been through worse. I've been through worse. I think I could say that I finally saw it for what it was. And I was no longer willing to bear the bill that I would have to pay the next day. And that was, I guess the ego had been cracked momentarily, and I knew I needed to leverage that like really quickly. So that happened. And at the same time, I had met an individual who was very good to me and was willing to be a male mentor. And he was a boss of mine, but he gave me an alternative identity. He didn't realize that. I didn't realize that, but he was giving me an alternate path to travel, which was not the one that I had been traveling my whole adult life, which was a drug dealer, someone that got kind of booted out of the US, all the crime, the way that I had viewed myself up to that date. He was offering me an opportunity to go and work with him and become someone different. And so the rock bottom, coupled with a better alternative, was the jumping off point for me.
Man. So in a sense, he kind of like a guide, met you at a fork in the road, presented another option in a sense, and in a way kind of guided you on your hero's journey, which in much part has led you to where you are today.
That's exactly right. He didn't focus on, and probably because he didn't have to, because I'd hit a rock bottom, but he didn't focus on what probably a lot of other people that had tried to help me focused on was trying to change the bad behaviors. He just showed me what success was like, looked like, and he gave me a roadmap, and he went with me. Now, had I not made the decision to change those behaviors and do my own personal development on the side, I would have probably fucked that up. But I was ready, and we just went after it.
There you go. Yeah, sometimes it's because you probably, he could have spent all that time looking at the negative side of things with you and looking at trauma and shadow and that stuff that I'm sure you were already familiar with, right? That dark side energy was there, but it wasn't necessarily motivating enough. When he presented an alternative reality and a more positive light side to what was possible, like there was the ignition, right? And there it took.
Yeah.
That's so important.
Interesting thing is he's done Mankind.
Has he?
But later. Yeah, but after we met. But he was going through some of his own stuff, but he's done Mankind. There's a local guy, Carter McNabb.
Yeah.
You may know him. Carter took him and another dude.
Shut up.
And, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Man, this network, I tell you, we're probably at like, I don't know, 80,000 blokes now in the past 30 whatever years that have gone through our new warrior training. And that network, it blows my mind how small the world gets in this space. And it's also very inspiring to know that those ripples are happening out there. And so you said something just now around, he's this guide, this mentor offered you a new reality. He went through his own challenges. I think that's really important that we jump into this here because, most of what the updates I see from you on social media is, mate, you've just crushed a 45-kilometer run, just an easy Sunday, great success in your company and in your work, beautiful family. And what didn't surprise me per se, but definitely I appreciated you sharing in the beginning of this interview is you're like, man, I'm kind of hitting a plateau right now in my life. And this one side of my brain was like, but you're the habits guy. This other part of my brain was like, thank God. Not that I want that for you, right. But man, can I relate to you more now? And I can remove the barriers that my mind was putting between you and I, where I'm going, man, look at this stud who's doing like ultra endurance races and has his kid running out with him. And so number one, thank you. Number two, what's that been like for you?
Yeah. So, I was talking to a woman named Jo. She runs a high performance business here in Melbourne called the Mind Room. They do counseling. They do kind of performance orientated coaching for execs, and we've developed a friendship. She was a guest on my show, and yesterday she said to me that I'm not to move out of my comfort zone. So that's a very different thing that I've never had someone say that to me, and I've never thought that would be something that's okay. And the reason she was saying that is because of the culmination of change that I've thrust upon myself and my family in the last year, and the compounding effect of that change, which none of us really realized the impact until recent. And so, we moved to Victoria during the COVID lockdown, and we got stuck at the border. So our stuff came through. We couldn't get through. The government wouldn't allow us. And this was August 2021 or something. We're there, we're stuck at the border. We end up sneaking through. And because we're not going to be, it was like The Walking Dead out there. People are like, friend or foe, you're from New South Wales. And, New South Wales had high numbers, and we were just staying here, there, and everywhere. And we snuck through, and we get to our rental, and, I'm immediately need to hit the ground running because I came for business reasons. And so I'm, immediately in the office every day, 5 a.m., getting home 6 p.m. We don't know anyone. We're adopting to Melbourne. We've got some people out here. And from there, we're there for 4 months. We buy a house, another move. We go to the US a couple months later. There's a COVID. We can't get in. We have to leave early because of COVID. We come back. My son's having issues at school, adopting to his new school. My wife and I get married. I then leave the business that I've been a part of and owner in. So there's new change. I start contracting. I go into a chaotic company that's highly dysfunctional. The people within the company demand and need a lot of emotional support. And I took on a lot of that, not realizing the cost of that to me and probably my family. So we're moving through all this kind of moving different jobs, changes for the kids, and we're in a new place. It's cold all the time. We're indoors. My wife's indoors. And so we just, to cut a long story short, realize that, and to some degree, it can happen in marriages and with kids. You get into running your own race because you kind of got your struggle going, right? And you come back and you connect as much as you can with your partner. And usually my wife and I are pretty good at that. But in New South Wales, I was more flexible and I was around the house more. When we moved to Victoria, I was more in an office. And so she wasn't seeing me throughout the day. There wasn't those moments of just being around each other. And my level of flexibility had kind of gone down. So what we realized a couple months ago, 3 months ago, was like, fuck, everyone's a bit shell-shocked. And, I'm still doing a million things and I get it done relatively well. I'm not really racing as much, and I haven't raced consistently for a couple years. Like every now and then I'll run 50K, or I'm kind of always ready to race. But I'm very aware of the demand that takes and the toll and what that takes away from the family. So I kind of parked that for a while. I'll get back to it. But yeah, so like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, I'm now in a position where, I've exited the previous company. I have a lot more flexibility. I've taken a contract role in a firm. I'm friends with the CEO. It's good work. I'm helping them do some cool stuff. They're one of Australia's oldest companies. They're the 33rd oldest company in Australia. And I'm helping them do some really cool stuff. But the bottom line is I'm really focused on being close to home and really ensuring that my wife is supported. My kids are transitioning. My oldest is now going to primary school. I just want to be around more, taking him to school, bringing him home from school. And I'm a pretty aware person, and I'm a person that, one of my values is family. Like, I am ambitious about a healthy and connected family. But even with that, we can still move into a place of being on autopilot, not necessarily seeing or being with what's really going on. And so the conversation I had with Joe yesterday was just around all this stuff, and her feedback to me was interesting, and it's bang on. It's that you stay within your comfort zone, and I'm going to do that. And so having the skill and the ability to shift gears and know what's needed is important. And you know what, to be honest with you, I had done this during COVID. We had our daughter during the depths of COVID when everything was on lockdown. And I was very intentional about not doing a lot, and I just took the time to consolidate the family. And it was probably one of the best years of my life. And that year, I didn't necessarily do too much out of my comfort zone. For those, it might be some of the stuff I was doing might be still, I was running far, and doing stuff like that. But I wasn't doing anything that was beyond or stretching me, because I was acutely aware that the situation required me to be fully present with my wife and at home, because we had a son and it was COVID, so the world became quiet anyway. And it was one of the best times of our life. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that's what I'm going to be doing now. And when I say that I'm at a plateau, from the outside in, everything still would look great, right? Like I'm still moving my body. I'm still doing the things that ensure that I've got a sound kind of mind and body and things like that. But I think what I'm focusing more on is the spirit and the family and looking at kind of getting back to a place where I feel connected.
Fantastic, man. I love to hear that. I've definitely noticed from when we first met in probably 2019, virtually, still haven't got to meet you in person, which is the world kind of what we were. Right? To now is, definitely like some of your edges have been smoothed in a way. And it's great. Not to say that it wasn't great before. It's just, there's like, I don't know, I feel like your roots are deeper from this. And the COVID kind of had that impact on me in a sense. I'm a trained extrovert. I am naturally very happy on my own. I recharge alone. And so the pandemic I was like a pig in mud for most of that, except they closed some of the trailheads, which made me mad. But it's definitely that time to kind of reflect, look at, kind of take stock of what's important right now. What really is the necessary, needed, as opposed to all the fast-paced, exciting, shiny things that are happening left and right, professionally and out there. And so I think that's really cool to see that shift in you. What I'm intrigued with is, I'm sure this is going to be momentary. I'm sure it's not going to be the last time it happens. But have you even considered what might be and even if you haven't considered it, let me ask you this: what would be your process to, habitually, what would be the habits? What would they look like to get you kind of back into gear of stepping outside that comfort zone, establishing a new normal, and getting back to that high performance place?
Where in your life are you standing at a crossroads? What is the resistance that's holding you back? There is a circle of brothers waiting to meet you and stand with you in facing your next step. That is what the online Crossroads course from the Mankind Project USA is about. Facing your resistance and stepping into your brilliance. See the show notes for details.
That will be easy. Because, it's interesting, your previous comment, like when you met me in 2019, I was in a very competitive mindset because I was running a lot and I was allowing that to consume me purposefully because it was my current crucible at the time. I had moved, prior to that, I was in a much more softer state through a deeper meditation, and I was studying a lot prior to that. But I decided to move into more of a competitive stance, and I was expressing myself through that, and I was in the depths of it when we met. And so I probably assumed more of that warrior quality during that period, and you would have felt that. To your question, performance orientation and pushing the needle is natural for me. That's actually my comfortable state. The state of being here at home with my UGG boots on for you're Australian.
I get it.
You probably get. I don't think. Yeah, I mean, most people get it.
I got my mocks on.
How it is, bro. Yeah, you know what I mean. But like, to be in that state here, and just kind of be with that and be okay with that, is the part which is actually more challenging in many ways. And I was talking to Joe about this yesterday. Like, it's not about just physically being present at home. It's not just about being physically here at home. But for me, the new crucible, I suppose, the new challenge, because that's what it is while I'm at home, I'm present. And I think, because, I've got business things going on throughout the day, but I'm choosing to be home at 2, so I could be close from a proximity perspective. But that could create chaos if I don't manage that right too, because it's like could be like a bull in a china shop, right? So what I guess what I'm trying to say, for me, the key in the short term is that when I'm in the house with the kids and I'm with my wife, because I work in a different part of the house and in a different building, I guess, different room. When I'm in the house, is really being there and being present. I've given myself a timeline on this though, and it's a healthy timeline, which is 12 months. Right? That's like, good. So once I start to hit 6 to 7 months of this, I will commence the planning for the next thing, the next business venture, right? So, and that won't be very difficult because I'll have rested, I'll be ready, I'll get some of the desire back in terms of the business side. I've come out of a few years of really grinding and going quite hard, and so I know that will happen, and what I will do is then start to create more structure around work patterns, workflows. Whereas right now, I and my body and my family need it where I sleep till 7 now a lot of the times. Right? Like, I don't do the 5 a.m. thing unless I go into the city. And because I go into the city early, I get up early then and I work out early. But if I'm working or I'm being at home, I'll kind of sleep until I wake. And that's great for me. And to your earlier question, like, waking up at 5 for me is standard. Like that, the kind of sleeping in piece isn't. So I was
gonna say this isn't about one-upping you at all, but my daughter has a real great time at 3 a.m. That's when she wants to party. Yeah. So that's my wake time these days.
Yeah, I know what you mean, man. Like,
I finally can relate to when people talk about that, and when you talk about that, because I know that was still the case when we first met, because your son was quite young. But you've got this new way of being, in a sense. It's momentary for the time being, but it's allowing you that ability to kind of sharpen the axe, because you're going to get back out there and start swinging it like mad again. And you said that it's not going to be hard to get back into it, and my interpretation of that is because it's not going to be anything new. You're going to be picking up old habits, old behaviors, I guess. New mindset, sure, but the actions aren't foreign. I can relate to that in a sense where a buddy of mine said he's never run more than 10Ks, and I was like, awesome. I was like, I bet you could do it tomorrow. And he's like, yeah, but I don't want to suffer the whole time. I'm like, all right, well, there's a 25K in January. I had no plans on doing it, but if you want to do it, let me ride the wake of your motivation, because I've been way out of shape since this baby came along. And it was kind of cool to be like, yeah, 25K in Jan. I've done it before. It's not this mountain, it's a molehill. It's, of course you got to do the stuff. I went for a run. You got to do the stuff to get ready for it. But it was the teeny insignificant 1 kilometer runs that made the 2 kilometer runs possible, that made the 5 kilometer, the 10 kilometer. Like, it seemed so insignificant and small in the beginning, but it really did build up. And it made, I guess, if we talk about my first marathon, there was so much focus on the marathon that I was forgetting about what needed to happen each day. And when I forgot about the marathon, the little things, right? The tiny little training sessions became the habit, became the rule, became the ritual. Say you're doing this fresh, right? Speak to RJ 20 years ago, or perhaps a colleague of yours, or someone who is right at the beginning stages. They're thinking 2023, new year, new me, let's do this. What is the advice you're giving to them to kind of begin that process?
I will say this before I answer that question. My CEO at the current company I'm with, he's a friend. And when he ran his first marathon in 2019, I ran my 7th, consecutive one. And that was the Gold Coast Marathon, which is your hood. We're going to run that in July. Because now I'm working there, and he wanted to use me, I think, as a accountability piece. So and that works well with my timeline, right? Like, for me, it's December now, and I'll start to kind of gives me something to aim for, just long enough, but I'll know I'll continue and keep moving my body. And I want to run a road marathon because I've never run just one. I want to actually have a real crack at it. And I think it's important to continue to keep your axe sharp. And for me, that's external events are a great way for you to do that, right? Particularly when you're accountable to others, and like you with your mate, you're leveraging him and he's leveraging you, and that's fantastic. For the person that is facing change or wants to change, I think we need to get very clear on who we want to be, right? Like, who do we want to become? Who are we becoming? And to start to crystallize what that archetype looks like, and start to get very clear at seeing ourselves as that. We have to get more in love with our future state than where we're currently at. And I know we all talk about being in the present moment, but when we're talking about change, we have to project into the future. We have to start to be able to see ourselves down. And we're talking about the hero's journey. One becomes skillful when they're on the path at seeing themselves on that journey, future orientated, and what they look like. David Goggins actually said this, and I know we talked about him before the show. Like, he goes, his ability to see himself at the end is amazing. Like, he was saying that about himself, right? I paraphrase. Like, he could see himself at the end very clearly, and that keeps him going. And so I think the first thing is we need to start to become clear on who we want to become, who we are becoming. And then what are the activities? What are the things that we need to do that are going to help us get there? Right? And so once we start to uncover the activities, we then engage those activities. And I like to say to people, if you're going to go to the gym and you're not a gym person, get accountable, get included, right? Like, if I were completely unhealthy, or like I feel intimidated going into the gym, But I realize that my future self, I see myself as a fit dad, a dad that can play with my kids. And I know it's something I need to change. If I go to the gym, I'm going to join a group in the gym. I'm going to join something that is going to hold me and support me, where there's people around me that are going to help give me the confidence and the structure and the accountability, and where I don't feel alone.
The fellow
I
dilts.
think go on. Yes, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. Whenever I start to get worried about if I'm out of shape, my wife will rub my tummy. She goes, "Baby, don't worry, dad bod is sexy." And I'm like, "Dude,
It's not a dad bod, it's a father figure. Thank you very much."
Yeah. Not happening. So I think becoming very clear on who and why we're doing what we're doing, and it not being some knee-jerk reaction of a New Year's resolution or I think it's good, so I'm going to try it, because it's not sustainable. If you don't connect your habits to your identity, it's not going to stick.
Man, quick anecdote. I love this topic so much. Being a recovering gym owner, January was a very busy time, and everyone came in with the arbitrary 10 kilos. I want to learn the 10 kilos. And I'm like, what does 10 kilos have to do with anything? And they're like, well, I don't know, maybe I'll lose weight and I'll feel better. And when we could dig deeper, and that 10 kilos turned into be a better role model for my kids, have better sex with my wife, finally do something for myself and not for the kids. Like when we got to that, I'm like, that'll get you out of bed at 10 and at 5 in the morning when it's raining and cold and you don't want to come to the gym. That'll get you out of bed more than 10 kilos, a number on the scale.
Yeah.
I also love what you said, the be versus the do part. Something that really happened for me was, being a gymnast, explosive, not really good at the endurance stuff. I have the ugliest flat feet, my feet are designed to throw evil rings into volcanoes. That is all they are designed to do. And so I told myself I couldn't run forever. And a friend of mine who likes to hold me to a higher standard than I do sometimes was like, man, that's just bullshit. What a story you're telling yourself. And I was like, excuse, the feet, blah, blah, blah. He's like, gun to your head right now, you'd run a marathon. Because the alternative would be getting popped. And I was like, well, maybe I should change this narrative. About 4 months into training for a marathon, all I was thinking was the end. And I'm sitting there struggling and suffering and blah, blah, blah. After that, I get coffee with a mate and he's like, so how's life as a runner now? And I'm like, I'm not a runner. I'm just trying to do a marathon. And he's like, I've seen your Strava. You are out every day. I think you're a runner. Boom. It went from outside in. I need to achieve this outside thing that maybe after I tick the goal across the finish line, I can call myself a runner. He's like, nah, dude, what do runners do? They run. What do they sometimes do? Marathons. That was the game changer, which made all the habits different, which was the part, the being.
So, massive point. I actually talked to Joe about this, Joe Descent, on his podcast. Because we were talking about kids. And I do this with my son. I call it curating his identity, right? I use language very carefully with him. And I try to incorporate an inside-out approach, and I experiment with different things. He runs pretty far for a little kid. He's not fast, but he has an engine, and we're out on the trails, and he loves to get into kids experiment with montages. Like they like to, when they do something, they like the gear and they like to really, it's an interesting thing. They want to own that persona. And, we'll run, and I'll be like, you're a trail runner, and he'll be like, what? And this was at the beginning of the running journey, right? And he would be really interested in what he perceived as kind of external labels, like of a runner or someone that was running. And over time, as we started to run more, he started to build this sense of, I'm a runner, I run, it's who I am. And so the way he runs and when we run is not common, but for him, it's become part of who he is and something he does. It's BAU, which is business as usual. And I think, like, it's very important. I get it with my kids, that they experience certain things, good things, whether that's running or some form of study, and then they start to embrace those positive qualities and labels, not as something that they're doing, but something is who they are. And I think that was what you're talking about, right? Like, when you start to realize that, and this is what happens during habit transformation or habit change, is people don't stay on the bus long enough for that to happen. Because yes, at the beginning it requires will power. Yes, at the beginning it's an external process that you're engaging and therefore feels uncomfortable, but their penny will drop that it is not something you're doing, it is part of your being. And at that point, it's now incorporated. It's standard. And that's what happened for you. And I would argue, facilitate and manufacture those opportunities for your kids.
That's what's coming alive in me right now as you say that. I've been teaching at our university here in Chattanooga through their professional education. So it's not credited. It's for companies to hire us to teach them. My where I work most is emotional intelligence, leadership, and kind of crucial conversations. And one of the classes I taught was coaching, moving people forward. And a distinction that I had to teach was that, reward the activity, reward the behavior, reward the habit. So one of you guys or gals does something really well. Instead of saying, man, you're so smart, say, wow, great problem solving skills. And what that does is reminds them that, hey, when you use your problem solving skills, you get a good grade. But if you say to a kid, oh, you're so smart, and they get an A, what happens when they get the C or the D? A binary has been created in their minds and in their brain. And so what I hope to do, and probably won't stick the landing all the time with Bindi, my daughter, and subsequent children, is that if I can just embrace and empower the action as opposed to the identity, they will get to the identity themselves. They will believe it themselves. Even though I believe it through and through, they're the author. They have to believe it themselves.
That's exactly right. They have to engage the experience. Experience cannot... We can't imbue a way of being and thinking. Kids have to experience it. We can manufacture the environments for them to then learn those experiences and lessons. My son is 5, and he's going through a phase right now where he's very interested in the concepts of winning, losing, failure. And he's not a competitive child. My eldest is very fair. He'll he'll defer his own happiness for others. There's a beautiful quality in him which I have to foster. I want to foster, harness, but also protect, because I'm not naive about the world we operate in. And he will defer. He struggles with why. He asks me why people don't respect losers, right? Or what happens if he fails, right? Like, there's all these questions that are tricky that he's asking because he's trying to understand those dynamics. And I have to answer them with skill. And I keep bringing him back to effort, right? It's about effort. Yeah. And because everything else is too complex. It's too difficult. Like I try to tell him the other day, there's no failure. I try to explain to him that I fail in certain ways, but we're still learning and moving forward, and it's okay to lose. But at the same time, I was trying to explain to him that we should play to win, and it gets complex, and you're right. Like it's that whole growth mindset piece, right? We have to bring it back to the effort, what's in front of us. And but yeah, it's interesting. He's just really interested in this whole dynamic.
That's really cool. It's piquing his interest at a young age, because I mean his little prefrontal cortex is just, it won't be there till he's 25, 27, right? It's not done growing. It's in the early stages, yet he's trying to tackle and grasp. I love that you're having the conversation with him, because for me, private all boys school, which very much celebrates the victors, it made me not just want to play. I just don't want to play. If there's a chance at losing and failing, I don't even want to get involved. And because I had so much fear of that failure, what it would feel like we had mandatory cross country every year, 5 kilometers. And I was like, there was the dude in the golf buggy behind me all the time. Like, you got to finish, kid. or you're DFing it, DNFing it. So that was, that was my experience from a young age. I love that you're doing that with your son. And, I hope that it sounds like he has a really beautiful nature. And I think more people could learn from that life isn't a zero-sum game. And that just because someone loses and winners doesn't mean that the pie has been taken away. The opportunity has been taken away. That there's so much to be said for just the effort and turning up and doing your best.
If he finds what he loves to do, and that's why I have him experimenting with lots of different things, not just sports, because truth be told, he's not a very sporty kid. He runs with me, and he will develop an appreciation of exercise in the outdoors as a result of that. But his thing may be completely academic. If he finds what he loves, he will put effort in that endeavor, and he doesn't necessarily have to be competitive in the conventional sense, but he will be moved by that material, whatever it may be. And as a result of that passion, he will do well. But he's very fair, and he self-sacrifices, and that's a great quality. That's something that his sister is very different, who's 2. I could already see. Mm-hmm. She's different. She goes in, get out of my way. She wants to be first, right? He'll stand back and allow others to be first. And that's a great quality, and something that I had to make sure I didn't see as a weakness. Because my stuff comes up too when I see him deferring his own needs for others.
Yeah. That's a beautiful piece. That's a beautiful piece. And I'm sure that's just his true nature. He's going to learn the pros and cons of that. and what it means to touch the stove. Whether it,
yes,
they can, whether it's people pleasing or whatever comes from that.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. Yeah. Well, I'm so grateful to have spent this time with you. I feel so grounded, and I also feel grace for myself at this phase of life. I've never been this out of shape in like 7 years. And I have so many parents come to me and go, dude, give yourself a break. Like, you just had a kid. You're not sleeping much. Like, that's just par for the course. And there's this part of my brain that wants to hold me to a higher standard that goes, don't buy into that. Don't buy into that. Not you. Not you. You're special. No, not you. You can't accept that. And to spend time with a high performer like yourself who is validating the path of, hey, sharpen the axe right now. The wood's there to be split. It's going to be there to be split. But right now the axe needs to get sharpened. Is a great reminder for me, and a cool alternative to the conversation I envisioned us having, which is how do we get guys pumped up and jacked for 2023 and, really launch in and, all those typical tropes of our high performance culture, hustle, grind. It's turned into something much more fulfilling, deep, enriching, and a message that I believe will connect with more people, which is for me, what I'm taking away from this conversation is, give yourself the grace to know when the time is right to take on challenge and to go to that degree of performance, and just start with the small things. The tiny, seemingly insignificant actions that equate to better health, better mindset, better emotional wellness, mental wellness. And you've guided us on that by being where you are, being honest, being truthful about it all. And it's a good look on you, man. It's a really good look.
No, I appreciate that. And Brendan, you're completely right. Like, having the skill to know when to be fluid and flexible, like for you right now, when I was where you're at, my exercises were 15 minutes, on a mat, burpees, it was quick, 5K runs. It was functional, purely about sweating and getting the endorphins going. And that's where you probably want to be. Just start to shift your expectation on what success looks like in that space, and get it in when you can fit it in. And that might be a walk because you're fucking tired, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. Take your wife. How old's your baby?
5 weeks.
Yeah, 5 weeks. Put the baby in the baby jogger.
Yeah.
You get creative with what you do, and how you do that. And you'll figure it out. Like, you'll start to get more creative because you'll have to. And you'll optimize.
Beautiful. Well said, brother. Well said. Well, for those listening, how can they find out more about you, about the show? And we'll make sure those are all in the show notes. Take it away.
Yeah, man. Ultra Habits, www.ultrahabits.co. That's CO. Everything is there. The interviews are there, and the conversations range from, getting off the couch to, some of the stuff Brandon was talking about earlier around habit formation, performance, through to the kind of softer stuff around what we're talking now, the softer ways of operating. It's all there. So just go to the website. I'm on social media as well, Rj Singh, Ultra Habits. But I think just go to the website. You'll get everything you need there.
Well, it's a phenomenal show. You are a great host. You conduct a beautiful interview, and I'm a fan. So I'm going to be one of those subscribers myself. And yeah, I really enjoyed listening. So I encourage and implore all of you listening to this episode right now to give it a listen. Check out the Mark Divine interview. I think that's a great starting point. Thoroughly enjoyed that one. Rj Singh, It's been a pleasure, my friend. And for those of you that have joined us today, this has been another episode. Let's see if I botch this one. This has been another episode of the Mankind Podcast, the show where we break the molds of modern manhood to prove there's more than one way to be a man. To be a man, that's right.
Or
Or
just
to be.
That
There's more
works
than
too.
one way to
Yeah.
be. I love that. Oh, you know, we're wrapping up 100 episodes. I think we're entering the next century. Maybe a bit of a rebrand and a new message. More than one way to be. Beautiful. Lots of love, guys, and we will see you next week. This has been another episode of the Mankind Podcast, produced in association with the Mankind Project USA. We have been your hosts, Paul Newell, Boyson Hodgson, and myself, Brandon Clift, and we want to thank our guests for joining us today and imparting their wisdom from their experiences in this amazing journey called life. If you want to find out more about today's guests and support them in their mission, you can find links to them in the show notes. Now, if you have found gold and insights that you believe could benefit your loved ones and those you care about, be sure to share it with them. And of course, we are always grateful for a rating and review of the show on iTunes. Now, we've got to give special thanks to our back-end team, producer, editor, and audio ninja for the show, Michael J. Russer, and Don Huff, who takes care of our graphics and promotions and pretty much makes us look pretty. So, of course, thank you, Don. Now, above all else, we've got to thank you, the listener, because through your attention and your support, you have made it possible for us to let men all over the world know that they are not alone and that there is more than one way to be a man. And if something in this episode has touched you, then perhaps it is the call to action to get involved in men's work. With live trainings happening constantly and in-person trainings happening all over the world, the Mankind Project definitely has something for you. Now, if you've enjoyed the music in this episode and all of our episodes, be sure to check out Jim Donovan and the Sun King Warriors. I have links to them in the show notes. And lastly, just know, what it means to me to be a man is completely different than what it means for you. What it means for Paul, what it means for Boyson, that is the beauty of this journey. So if you are looking for guidance, support, and community as you begin to unpack and dive deeper into your men's work journey, then you know where to find us. Same place, same time, next week. Lots of love. We'll see you then.